Hey everybody, I'm here with my dear friend, Steve Lukather. What's up, Luke?
Hey man, how's it going? Thank you very much for having me, and I'm just gonna go on record saying that you've been really good to me, and I really appreciate it, man.
Come on, man.
I mean, there's so many brilliant players, especially the young guys are just killing it. I'm so inspired by it, and I'm kind of glad I'm the old guy. I don't have to compete out of the box with these guys. When I started, the entry level was like, you know, if you could go. That was like, you know, I might as well be Jimi Hendrix before there was ever a Jimi Hendrix. And Jimmy Page played the solo on the song, which goes. And I could do that at like 10 years old, and everybody thought I was like, oh my gosh, because there wasn't any. That hadn't come into
Hadn't
play
been invented yet.
You know what I mean? So if you could play like a. You were in.
When did you?
Now, when you start, y'all know what the entry level is as far as technique and stuff like this. So I kind of learned how to play the dumb, play along with everybody else stuff, rhythm guitar before I learned my first blues scale about 11 years old or something. We had this guy, Mark Hollingsworth, who was a great Mark. If you're ever out there, I didn't forget. He had a great Jaguar guitar, and he had the first fuzz and wah that I ever played through. And I was about 11 when I got that.
How old was he?
He was like 20-something years old.
Okay.
But I was playing in this band with these other two guys, and we were working on the weekends, and he would come in and show us songs. And he took a shine to me for some particular reason. And he goes, hey, man, you know, because I didn't really know what I was doing. He just goes, here. And I went. And he goes, you have a vibrato. And I go, what's that? It just seemed natural for me to go.
Wow.
You know, then, you know, when I stopped, most kids would go. And for some reason, my hand just had it, and he went. I wasn't aware of it, and the rest is. I learned everything exponentially as it got harder. I was able to do it.
Okay, let's talk
but
about.
Now you start at entry level words.
Well, that's because you got YouTube.
If I was a young guitar player looking out, going, "Have you guys heard Eric Gales or, Mateus Asado or Phil X or fucking John Five or you know, Satch? I mean, everybody knows Satch Vai and of course everybody's inspiration, Eddie. But I came at it from a different point of view. I started with the Beatles, and it got harder as it went. So I mean,
okay, let's talk about this. Let's start. What's the first solos that you learned?
I showed you that one, you know.
But when you start, so as song, you
Well,
would learn songs.
There weren't really solos
There
to
were
learn
parts, right?
until Jimmy and Clapton came along, and Jeff Beck, of course, Jimmy Page, and all those guys. But prior to that, if you could play like whatever the melody of the solo happened to be on a pop song at the time, like if you could play like you know. Oh, you know a bar chord. Ooh, you're a badass. You know, nowadays it's funny, right? You know, I have my guitar set up for the clean super sound right now, but you get the idea.
When you started learning solos, were you like, oh, this is amazing?
I didn't really know. I just wanted to learn whatever I heard on the radio or whatever I heard on a record. I'd find some. I was always playing with older guys, which is how I got myself into trouble as a young lad. But I was able to hear stuff and figure it out. And then when I couldn't figure out, I'd find some older guy that knew how to play it to show it to me. There was a bunch of kids down the street from my parents' house that had a band. They were like 15, and I was just a little kid. And I was just fumbling around, struggling to make a noise on the thing. And there was this one guy who was a guitar player, brought down this Rickenbacker electric, which was like, you know, you got a Beatles guitar, man, you know. And he taught me how to play. That was a Standell song called Dirty Laundry.
Right.
That was one of the first things I learned. One finger. Dumb, right? But at the time, if you could play something off the radio, people were impressed.
You told me something earlier today that your mom won a piano, a spinet piano. Tell the story.
My mom won a spinet piano on the Hollywood Squares when I was like, I don't know, 10, 11 years old. And I had been playing guitar.
I didn't believe it. I was
my
like,
mom actually is like, Charlie Weaver to win, you know what I mean? And she you won the spinet piano. You know, older people understand the game show routine, but it arrived at my house, this little teeny piano, nobody could play it. So it ended up in my room. It fit into a little thing that I had in my room, a little area, and I just taught myself how to pick out the notes. And then I started playing with real keyboard players, and they taught me stuff, and then I studied piano and when I started taking music really seriously at 14, I started studying everything.
You learned how to read music then, right?
It was very difficult because I played by ear from the time I was like 8 years old or something, like 7, 8 years old, just playing dumb stuff. But when I decided that I wanted to do this professionally, my father's in the television and movie business. He was working at Paramount. He did all the behind the scenes stuff. He was an assistant director, production manager. When I was born, he was doing the Ozzie and Harriet show.
Okay.
And he did I Dream of Jeannie, and you'll see the name late night Nickelodeon or something and go, hey, is that somebody in my family?
Cool.
My grandfather or my dad. But he said he knew Carl Fortino, who was the head of music, and he was the contractor for Paramount. He goes, hey, my kid plays guitar. He needs to learn how to read music. I'll let him do this, but he's got to learn the basics. He's got to. My dad was like really adamant about, well, if you're going to do this, then you've got to learn. And I sort of went kicking and screaming at first, but because I hadn't yet to meet the Porcaro brothers in high school when I found out what a studio musician was really all about. But I started studying. It was really hard, man, because if you could play good and you have to start going. And I had a really good ear, and I had this great teacher, Jimmy Weibel, God bless his soul.
Yes.
Legendary jazz guy.
Talk about him.
Well, Carl's the guy that said, get him as he's the right teacher, because he had the patience to teach a beginner who could play. I had to audition for him. He goes, oh, you play good, but you can't read, so we're going to start over. So I was like, oh, God, it was really difficult, because my ears would catch. I'd hear it once, and I could play it back. So what he would do is he goes, here, take this and work on the reading on this, and I'd come back the next week, and he'd hand me a chart that had the same level of reading, but the notes were all different. And he goes, okay, play this for me. And I'm like, obviously scuffle. He get mad. He goes, stop using your ear. You're not reading the part. And he would bust my balls on it. And it was really hard to go back and learn the basics, you know, after I'd already been playing in bands and all the rest of that. But I'm really glad. I wish I'd started from the beginning. I got to be really honest with you. Because, you know, guitar players are legendary bad readers anyway, for the most part, because it's one of the few instruments that has the same note in several different places, right?
Exactly. 2.8 places. Somebody told me that once before.
What is
the average note.
2, 3, 4, 5 notes for a C, right?
Yeah. No, that's actually what makes it so difficult.
If you play the flute, middle C is middle C.
That's right.
There's nowhere else to look for it.
Yeah.
So we have to think in terms of position and look ahead to see. You know, the greatest fear of every guitar player is the ledger line.
Right.
I used to get on sessions, go early, and go, okay.
How much reading did you really do in sessions, though?
You know, when I was young, I got up to the point where I could read good enough to be on record dates.
Yeah.
And most of the time it was like I wrote 98% of the time I wrote all my own parts.
Okay.
Aside from the roadmap of learning with the changes and the form, learning how to double DS and all the, you knew how to get around the chart, and obviously you knew what the chords were, and you had to have an arranger's ear.
Right.
You're not just going to sit there and play an F sharp major 7th chord for the whole time just because it says it on the paper.
On the 2% of the time that you had to read.
Oh, I had to read a couple times. There were a couple scary moments. Lee Ritenour saved me when I was 19 years old, and I was with him the other night. We had a great hang. It was me, Ritenour, Jay Graydon, and who the hell else was there? And me, I guess. And we just were reminiscing about the 70s and 80s before we were really artists and stuff. We were just the guys, you know. I remember being young, and I had gotten a flat tire to a date. Now, this Gene Page date was full orchestra, full strings, horns, live vocals, full, you know, there was 3 guitar players, and I was like guitar 2.
Who would be the other 2 guys, for example?
Ritenour was guitar 1, obviously.
Okay.
And somebody else, it may have just been the 2 of us, I don't remember, but I showed up late because I got a flat tire on the way to the gig.
Okay.
So I barely snuck in. And Rit was there, and we had just worked on something before. He took a little bit of a shine at me. I love the kid. And I get there, and of course I'm sitting at guitar 2. And I'm panicking, and Gene Page is like, I'm really sorry, my car broke. I had to announce it to 70 people in the room. So I'm this little zit-faced punk ass. Who is this guy? And I put my shit in, I get plugged in, and they're ready to take it. It's going direct to 2-track.
Oh, no.
Direct to 2-track. There's no can I punch my part in? No, man. And just as he started to counter off, I look at my part, and it's the piano part in D flat, no chord symbols.
Oh my God.
I had no time to skull it, nothing. And I look over at Rit, and he's got like tacit, which means layout, and fill, a couple chords on his. Mine looks like somebody wiped their ass with paper. And I must have looked at him like I saw my grandmother bent over in the shower, so my whole color like a cartoon. And by the count of 2, Rit did this. He bailed me.
Wow.
And it was a hard part. He sight read it perfectly, of course. And I had time to go, I got 16 bars to kind of collect myself, and then I just have to go. Or something like that, you know what I mean? And he's sight reading the block chords.
Problem.
Oh,
no problem.
You know, he said stuff for breakfast. He's one of the best readers, as well as a brilliant musician. But you know, he saved me. He could have let me die.
Okay,
and
so
he could have ruined my career because everybody in that room would have gone, "Oh, I saw that guy. He can't read. He can't." He saved my ass.
Okay, so
I would always do that for somebody if it was the tables were turned because I remember.
when did it go from people reading charts to people making up their own parts?
Well, we always made up our own parts on records. Always, from day one. Occasionally, I took a date as a young studio musician. Somebody goes, you want a session at whatever studio, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'll take anything because I want to break into the scene. And, you know, we all have stories. Everybody has stories. Ask anybody who had to sit next to Tommy Tedesco. Tommy would go like, Rit told me a great story when he first started out. Tommy was the king.
Explain who Tommy Tedesco was.
Tommy Tedesco is the grandfather of all studio guitar players. Had a photographic memory as well as could sight read anything. As a matter of fact, he could sight read so good. Glenn Campbell told me he turned the chart upside down and he read it perfectly, backwards.
Yeah, he was the grandfather of session guitar playing.
And you know, everybody knew he played on all the Monkees record. I mean, but he was a jazzer.
Right.
The difference between them is all those guys in the wrecking crew and all those guys, they were basically jazzers or country players. And then we were the next guys in, and we were mostly rock players that could do other stuff.
Right.
And we were the upstarts, you know. Personality-wise, they were very silent in the room, and we were not. We were a little bit more crazy, and it was a lot more fun. Not more fun, but it was a different kind of fun. Anyway, Tommy, he would do stuff. Like Rit came in, sat in Guitar One because he was like the new hot shot in town, and Tommy came in, saw him, sat down at Guitar Two, and just kind of looked at him. And it's like, and you know, they played the first. The Rit played it great. Tommy leans over and goes, "I'll bet you $100 you fucking up this time." They count off the tune, sure enough. It's like, out. You go to Tommy, meet Tommy at you used to have to go to the musicians union to pick up your checks, which were always like months after you did the session. And it used to be the thing, who has the most pile of checks? It was just stupid teenage shit, even though we were young. It was a lot of fun. But if you saw Tommy at the end, you had to be careful because he liked to gamble a lot. So he would bet anybody anything. Now, these checks could be for record dates. They could be for jingles, which would, like, you do a jingle for a half hour back then, it's $30.
Well, how do you even keep track of this stuff?
You have a date book.
Okay.
It says I'm here, and then in a certain period of time, you know you're going to be paid. If you haven't been paid, then you have to follow up with it.
Oh my God.
But generally, everybody was really cool and professional back then, so it didn't really happen much. But Tommy would go like, put his hand on the check. I'll bet you that. I'll bet you the whole pile of checks that my check is higher than yours. You want to take the bet? Now you're looking at Tommy going, I've been doing all record dates, so I know my checks are for $1,000, a couple grand, and his could have been for like a movie date for, you know, whatever, or a jingle for $25 or something.
Right.
And Jeff Porcaro lost to him a couple times, and Jeff was the busiest guy in town. Jack like Tommy, because he didn't want to not play with Tommy. He's a legend. It's like, you know, if you lose to Tommy, you go, okay, I lost to Tommy. Won't do it again. But everybody lost to Tommy at least once, and he was so great about it. He was like, he'd make you pay. And there's some guys that go, I'm just kidding. No, there's certain gamblers that, like, when you lose, you pay, even if they're your friend.
Talk about the guys that like Jay Graydon, Carlton. These guys.
Well,
the kind of the guys that were there
I would say
right
that,
before
when I
you
first
were.
got interested in becoming a studio musician, it was obviously after I met the Porcaro family, and their father was his top call. Steve, God bless Joe. You know, we spent a lot of time at his house, you know, rehearsing and stuff. And Jeff would always pop over because we were still in high school. Jeff was the drummer in Steely Dan when we were in high school, so they were making Katie Lied while we were in high school. And our high school band was me and Michael Landau on guitar, John Pierce on bass, Carlos Vega on drums, Steve Porcaro on keyboards. Plus we had 3 singers, Charlie, Laura, and Gina. And Jeff and David Page would come down and sit in with us. You know, and then we were like playing stuff off of Katie lied before the record came out. You know, we were all inspired. This is what we want to do. So we followed all the players that were on these records.
Okay.
Now, where I live in Los Angeles, I could go see Larry Carlton and Robin Ford play at this little jazz club called Dante's.
Right.
Down the street.
Yeah.
And because I knew Jeff was playing with him, and I knew, you know, I was able to meet these guys. And you know, when the Royal Scam album came out, man, that was a life-changing guitar event. It's like Larry Carlton playing the way he plays and using the notes and the way he plays with a rock sound, you know, with the distorted guitar sound. That was like, whoa.
Yeah.
That was one of those moments in my life, just like hearing Hendrix and Jeff Beck and Clapton and Pagey playing at the top of their powers, hit that same, besides the Beatles, which was the first hit, you know. But that one just hit me, because that was like, I had been going, I want to do something different than all the rest of everybody else. So I basically got sucked into that album hard.
Amazing.
I remember Carlos Rios was very young at the time. He came over to my house and he knew the solo. He said, "Hey, show me that solo." So, you know, he's another great player, great guy. But, you know, that one really hit me. And then through that, then I was listening to Jay Graydon playing on these great Gino Vanelli records. And he had some great solos on the early A&M records, not prior to him having the biggest hit that he had. But I used to love all those early Gino records. Great changes. And Jay ripped them. Jay was doing all, he was the call. So when I met Jay through Jeff Porcaro, David Paich, I met David Foster, who was a huge influence and help in my early career. But I met all these guys. And Larry used to let me come up to the house and hang out with him. And he was pretty stern with me, man. Like, he wasn't, you know.
In what way?
He's not a lovey-dovey guy. I mean, like, I don't know, it's not to say he's not a great guy.
Larry's the nicest guy, but I
you know,
can
where I'll
imagine.
come up and jump on you and hug you, he would never do that.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just every world different that way.
Yeah.
But he's an incredibly great guy. And shared information that I used to, when we did this tour together in 1998, it was one of those Japanese things, let's put guys together. And they offered him a list of people. He said, let's try to get Lukey out here and see what's going on. Just try to, and we had a blast. And every night, an hour before the show, I'd walk into Larry's dressing room with a guitar. I go, okay, what's my lesson for the day? And because I go, well, I got a captive audience here now. After studying and stuff all these years, and I had already made a name for myself, whatever it was, 1998. Larry was so gracious in sharing his knowledge. And part of that knowledge was, you know, most people think in terms of scales and linear things like that. But with Larry, what he taught me, some of the information he taught me, he didn't give it to me, I'm not smart enough to take in all the information Larry Carlton has. But he shared with me the way he thinks in terms of triads with different bass notes.
Right.
Like in the key of E, it's like, you know, people say, let's just jam in modal E, and and he goes, but if somebody's just vamping, you also have. Working all the way up the scale or any kind of altered, you know.
Right.
That's still just a D flat. Yeah, but if you get out of this, a lot of people get freaked out with, 13 flat 9, what do I play over that? I don't know theory.
Play that D flat triad.
Well, this is what Larry opened up for me. It's like, okay, you can look at it that way, and technically that's what it is, but if you just look at it as a D flat chord with an E in the bass, that opens up a lot more real estate for you to go, where can I go with that? Because all I ever did when I was young was copy the solos of my favorite artists, and then, you know, sneak in as time goes by, all that thievery you've done that we all do.
Right.
If you do it long enough and you're not just, you know, Xeroxing it, playing it, you incorporate some of those ideas in your own playing, that's how you develop your own style.
Yeah.
There's only 12 notes. I mean, how many, they've been played. Maybe every permutation of a great melody was done 10,000 years ago. And here we are just trying to make sense of it.
Well, Larry, what he did on that record, on the two solos on Don't Take Me Alive and Kid Charlemagne, was so different. That caught my ear, and I said, I want to do that.
I think it was during your interview with Larry.
Yeah.
That he talked about that, and he goes, I was just messing, you know. And then is Larry. He is so confident. He has perfect pitch, whether he admits it or not.
Right.
And there's
he's
nothing
got phenomenal memory for stuff,
well,
too.
Yeah. All those guys. I mean, like I said, he was sitting there. I learned so much from the cats that I sat next to. And Dean Parks. Let's talk about Dean Parks for a minute. Because
Amazing.
not enough. You need to have Dean on this show.
I love Dean. He's incredible.
He's one of the most unheralded.
Right.
To where he should be. You ask Larry.
Yeah.
Who the fucking baddest cat he sat next to, he's going to tell you Dean.
Yeah.
And now Dean started and went to high school with our original bass player, David Hungate. They were both horn players at North Texas State.
Really?
Which is why they both read so good.
Yeah. Dean's an unbelievable
Dean,
reader.
First, his acoustic playing is flawless, his technique. But Dean plays. Haitian Divorce.
Yeah.
I mean, listen to the note choices. And that's forever ago. Dean, I've sat next to Dean so many times. He's one of the nicest, most gracious, humble geniuses that I've ever known. And everybody knows everybody else. And everybody goes, yeah, Dean, but like, you need to have Dean on this show. That's all I can tell you. He's a
you know what? I did interview Dean and Jay.
There you go.
And but I haven't.
Jay's another genius guy.
Genius.
I mean, he all he does all night is learn stuff.
Yeah.
Like he's just, if there's anything about anything on planet Earth, but particularly music.
Yeah.
I mean, he still practices his perfect pitch, even though he hasn't done a date in 35 years or whatever.
Right.
He loves the music still. Jay's, he taught me so much about getting my sound, recommended me for dates, and hired me on his stuff. And he's been a dear, dear brother of mine for 46 years.
Okay, I want to ask you about
46. I've got 46 years in now.
Let's talk about rhythm parts first before we talk about solos. I love your rhythm playing, the stuff that you do. You just make them up on the spot, though.
Oh no, every day. I mean, that was why I got hired. It wasn't because I was a great reader. I mean, that's TV film. You have to be an excellent reader for television and film because that's every day, and you never know what you're going to get. You can get a 2-part classical etude, or you could get surf guitar. You don't know what you're going to get. You know what I mean? That's a whole lot. I'm like, I did a few of those enough to scare the shit out of myself. Go, I don't belong here. I really don't belong. I belong on the record side. And the irony is, those guys' pension is insane.
The film guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the guys that wrote their own parts, get this. How much do you think I get from the music? I'm going to bust the fucking musicians union right now. Now, I'm a legit sign the union contracts. I was doing 20 some odd dates a week, man, legit for what, 25 something odd years. I stopped doing it like almost 25 years ago. But, you would think my pension would be pretty good. Especially since I wrote 98% of all my parts, which I got no royalty. Now you plug in the drum machine, you're a fucking writer. I don't get that.
Right.
But I get $1,000 a month taxable. The shitty medical after 50 years plus in the musicians union.
With
and
all those
doing legit contracted union dates.
With all those
and they
huge
took out
songs
the
that
money
you played on.
from me. No, it doesn't matter if it's a hit song or not. That doesn't have anything to do with it. You did the session, you're on the contract, you get paid. Most of the time, I didn't charge more than double scale unless somebody wanted to offer it to me, and a few people did. But Jeff McCarl told me, he goes, don't ever ask for triple scale. They'll kill you on your way down. Because no matter where it is, you can't stay there forever unless you're going to stay in television film. Then you can still be Dean and be #1 forever. There's a couple other guys that I don't know that are doing it too. There's some young cats that are supposed to be brilliant, but I don't know some of the younger guys. I mean, the guys that I know that are playing records are Tim Pierce and Mike Thompson, and I think my brother Michael Landau, one of my favorite musicians and my oldest friend since we were 12. He does some stuff, but he's a road dog. We're road dogs because the road dog, I hate to say it, but...
I want to talk about parts.
Okay, let's get back to
you're coming up with parts. How do you know what a song needs, Luke, when you're sitting there?
When you get a chart that this is what's written on it. Sorry about the distorted guitar. It's kind of set up for something else, but you get the idea. Yeah, that's what my chart looked like. There was just B minor / A. How many times I played through some permutation of that chord change in a week would stagger you.
Right. So you're
like for example, that particular song, we'll use it as an example, just because you talk about hit songs or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, we don't rehearse. We don't get any demos. We don't know. We just show up. Who's playing with me? Oh, well, there's Jeff Picard. There's Louis Johnson. There's
So you have
Paige.
no idea who's on the date until
No,
you
I
get
mean,
there.
I know like Michael McDonald wants me to play on his record. I get a call from, what was it, Lenny Warnaker and Ted Templeman.
Okay.
So I'm like, yeah, I'm in. This is
Yep.
like 1980 or something like that. Michael's first solo album because he was with the Doobies at the time and already had the hits. Michael was actually supposed to be in our band.
Really?
Yeah, because Michael and Jeff Picard were in Steely Dan together.
Oh,
when
man.
they were doing. They were on that too. The Countdown to Ecstasy
Yes.
tour before Katie lied.
Right.
Yeah. So that was all Michael. But then Michael joined the Doobie Brothers a week before Jeff Porcaro and Paige asked him to sing in our band. Before we met Bobby and all this other stuff. There was a couple other guys that were in line that I wasn't even aware of. But anyway, getting back to the song.
Yeah.
So Michael always wrote these great songs. Well, I always loved Michael McDonald, and he's a dear brother. But he had this great tune. But like, what are you gonna play? So Jeff starts playing his groove, and Lewis immediately falls into the groove, and I just start playing. And we had that sorted out by the time the first run through had ended. Take two was the record, as I remember.
Okay, so when you guys are playing these things, just so I can have a mental image of this, you're doing a tracking date. Who's in the room? How far apart are you guys? Did you have your amps
Just
isolated
like
at the time?
Yeah, they put my amp in a back room. I think Don Landy took a DI off me too. He told me that once at Eddie's
How
house.
far apart are you guys standing typically on a date
right
like
here,
that?
man. Like there's, Michael was at a Rhodes. Paige, I forget what it was. Phil Gaines Greg Phil Gaines was playing this. He had this clavinet with a wang bar on it.
Okay.
You ever see that before?
No.
It's a clavinet, but it has this thing on it where you just, and everybody wants to play guitar, right?
Right.
So, but he was playing all those fills, and Michael was singing live and everything like that. We were all in the room together, playing together. I don't recall a click, although sometimes Jeff would go, give me the click, don't give it to anybody else.
Okay.
He was like that sometimes. And by the second take, you could tell, you look in the control room and everybody's jumping up and down dancing, and Michael's smiling. You go, I think we're onto something. And there were other times where you'd be like day 3 playing the same ballad, and you just go, kill me now.
But that was.
I am not, and my part would be like, just making some tasty little thing. But you have to do it for 3 days.
But that was rare, though,
That was
right?
in the 70s where they hire us to sit in a room while they did drum sounds all day long.
Right.
That's when trouble ensued.
Yeah.
And that's when, like, where's the band? I think they're in the women's bathroom. Ahead of your times, kids. Don't try this at home. Long time ago.
Okay, so I always harp on these things. I talk about the joke about before there was Pro Tools, there were pros.
That
right?
was Dean Parks was the first guy I heard say that. Before there
was Pro Tools, there were pros. Okay,
Yeah.
so
It's
having
a funny but kind of true thing,
Okay, so having to get things right, you rarely did punch-ins, right?
Oh man, I wouldn't say rarely. I mean, in terms of like you do it when you need to do it.
Yeah.
Because if something's great and you fuck up one note,
Right.
what would happen was, and this happened a lot because Jeff Porcaro was so fucking good, is that he always played his best shit the first couple of times.
Right.
And at that time, a lot of producers are like, we can fix everything else, but we got a great drum track. Where the Steely Dan, ask those guys. All they cared about was the drum track.
Right.
And then if they kept anything else, or they call guys back in to perfect their parts to the take that they edited together or whatever, and those guys were a huge influence. Steely Dan was like, the Beatles are my number one. Steely Dan's in there too, man, because just of what it did to me harmonically and how much I love their music too.
Yep.
I always, for 1 second, I almost got to be in Steely Dan once. In 1977, before our first album, they were looking to go on the road again. And Irving Azoff, God bless him, took a shine to me, and and they needed a guitar player. Like they had Walter, but they wanted somebody to be the rock guy, or would be the Jeff Baxter kind of guy, I guess. And that I fit that bill. And they said, yeah, you and Denny Diaz. And Denny's always been a great. Denny, what a great. Some of those solos.
Oh, amazing.
Just
amazing.
Nobody plays like that.
Nobody plays like that.
Perfect notes.
That's right.
Perfect phrasing.
Yes.
I don't care how he got there. I know what the record sounds like.
Right.
He just did a few takes, and those guys, they put one together, but he played it. But so we actually got together, and Jeff was going to play drums. It was like really exciting. It was before we started our first album, and I thought, wow. And Jay was a little bugged at me because he had played on Peg, And I'm going, look, they asked me that. Jay, he's like, man, it's my gig, A lot of guys thought, I said, it's not me, man. I said, I won't do it. I love you so much, you just I won't do it. How's that? And I called Jeff, and I said, hey, Jeff's like, I can rock on. And then the thing fell apart for some financial shit that I'm not privy to, but I was almost there. And I got to play with Donald once. I got to play with Walter once, and they were always really nice to me and stuff. And they're like heroes to me. God bless Walter's soul. He was, great stuff, you know. Donald's song. I mean, that music is soul music to me, and I learned so much dissecting it. It still does. It still sounds great.
Still sounds amazing.
It doesn't sound
God.
dated.
No,
it doesn't sound like
sounds better than it did.
It just makes you feel good, intelligent, great lyrics, great harmonics, grooves. I mean, everything. I mean, that's me. Some people don't like the stuff.
I want you to get back to this.
Edit.
I want you to get back.
We're
to
back
this.
to when figuring out what to play on a track.
Yeah.
It's the first, and see, back then there was no demos. You know, like you showed up and the artist would sit behind the piano or an acoustic guitar, and maybe somebody had written out a chord sheet. I can't tell you how many records I did on a legal pad, just writing down the changes.
So would they demo the song for you on the piano?
No, they just sit down and play the.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They sit down and play.
Maybe somebody had a cassette recording of them playing at home or something.
But
there were no
typically
slicked out demos. Didn't happen until the '80s.
They would just play it in the room with you.
Yeah.
And you just write down what the chart was.
Yeah, one of us would. Usually,
Okay.
we'd pick the perfect pitch guy like Foster or something like that. You know, you do it. Because he could do it with us just going, and we'd have a chord chart, and then we'd go out there and start dicking around with grooves and stuff, and then you see the artist get excited and the producer get it, because they hired us. They gave us a sketch, and we had to make the painting. We had to paint it.
How much of and I kind of know the answer to this, but you're always looking to the producer and what people are doing in the control room to see if the vibe's right? You
can tell when something's happening. You really can't.
Wait, what's it like when it's not happening? What are they doing in there?
It's brutal. There's just, you finish the take and it's like
nothing.
Silence. There's a moment, like an uncomfortable pause before the talk back comes back on. Guys, I mean, that was pretty good, man. Let's just try another one. Like, well, what do you want us to do? I don't know. It just didn't have the
Then
thing.
you know you're way off,
Then
right?
we're going, this is going to be a long day.
Yeah.
Now, the guys that were smart, getting back to the drum tracks, is if Jeff would play some magical shit, his body language, he could sell a producer on a take. Sometimes we'd be on one of these dates we always gave our all, no matter what. But some of the sessions you go like, let's get me out of here. I got a 7, man. You know what I mean? It's like 5 o'clock. It's like, let's get this done, because it was just staying. It wasn't. When things are moving up, you get excited and you want to stay with it until you get the take.
Are there times when you knew you had a great part and the producer's like, yeah, I was thinking something different? Do you think?
No, the worst, back in the days before there were tons of tracks, you'd have 24 tracks. That was it.
Yeah.
And one track for your solo. One track. So it's like, you had to nail it. If you fucked up, you could punch in on the one track. There was a couple times I'd get half of it right, and I go, I made one wrong. Let me punch in there. And that's the end of it. What sucked is that you play something real good, and they used to piss them off because I get it done fast. Yeah. My first shit, when I'm not thinking about it so much, is when I play my more adventurous, I haven't worked out in my mind what works yet or what makes people happy. I'm just they go, play anything you want. What do you hear? And I go for something, and I think it's pretty good. I was a little more cocky then because I was doing it all the time. I was like, the idea was how many takes does it take? I get it done in 1, 2, maybe. It was stupid childish shit, but you know what I mean? We were all like that. We teased each other, but we loved and respected each other a lot. But anyway, getting back to it, I play something really good, and they go, I think you got a better one in you. And I go, you know what, man? You can't keep that one. I mean, I go, because like when that's gone, it's gone forever.
Right.
Magnetic heaven or hell, depending on how you want to look at it. And a couple of times, man.
Yeah.
They do it, and they erase it, and I go, okay, I'll go for it. I'll try to incorporate some of the ideas, but it's never quite
good,
the same.
Right?
And then they keep making you do it and do it and do it, and they go, can you remember what you played the first time? And I go, when that dribbled out of their mouth, I'm like, before I needed glasses, I'd be like, sometimes you got to live with it. And there was other times I really wanted to punch something in because, like, for example, I'm going to give myself away here.
Okay.
I did this song that I co-wrote for the Tubes called Talk to You Later.
Love this song. I was just talking about it
and that was
today.
one of those things. We got one channel.
Yeah.
And I ripped that in 1, but the very last bend was a little under. I go, come on, man, let me just punch me on the last note. It's the last. No, I'm not touching it, because if we lose it, then we're like, So there's some flaws. There's flaws on every record I've ever done. Sometimes I leave them in on purpose to see, just to say, well, all my favorite records have little mistakes on it.
Doesn't it, after a certain amount of time, you forget what you didn't like about it?
Yeah, oftentimes, because I don't listen to my own records unless I have to go back and listen to something to learn for a tour or something like that.
When you
I
hear
work
something
really
on-
hard on a record and listen to it a billion times. After it's final mixed, I listen to it for about 2 weeks real hard, and then I don't listen to it again.
When you were doing these sessions all the time, you would know. Would you always recognize when you were listening to the radio that, oh, I played on this tune, or were there songs that you were like, oh, I have no idea I played on that
Yeah,
tune?
most of the time until my buddy Dan Huff came into town and like he started, he liked my stuff and he started playing. There was a couple of solos and I went, is that me? I love Dan. First off, he's a dear friend and a brilliant musician. And then he don't play like that anymore. When he first came to town, David Hungates knew him in Nashville and said, "There's this kid Dan Huff that really likes the way you play. He wants to come out there." So that was the only time I went. He was the guy that turned me on to Eric Johnson when I was doing.
Because he's on the first record.
Well, no, and he's on the second record. He was the one when they hired me to be on the second record.
Yeah.
I played a bunch of shit on that.
Yeah.
And he says, "Hey man, Luke," he goes, "You ever heard this guy Eric Johnson?" I said, "I heard him." He goes, "You should hear this cat do Hendrix and shit." He said,
Because they were both from Texas.
well, yeah, he's from
Right.
Austin. They knew
Yeah.
they were friends. They always still are friends.
Yeah.
And Chris can fucking play.
Chris is a great player.
Yeah, just so you know. I mean, and he's also a sweet guy.
I made a video about that. The solo on "Ride Like the Wind" is the greatest solo you can't hear.
Well, you should
'cause
listen
it's
to
not
my
loud.
first album, man. Page buried me the whole
They
record.
buried you the whole time. I
Yeah.
know. What's
I
up
used
with
to get
that?
mad at it, but I was 19 at
Why
the
did
time.
they do that?
I don't like the guitar solo's too loud. It bothers me. I go, Dave,
my
it's
God.
a solo. I fought with him for years. The first two albums.
Yeah.
It's like,
I mean, White Sister, these solos. I want to hear these things. I want to hear what you're playing. They're way too
do
buried
you
in the mix.
understand the arm wrestle I had back then?
But
with
this
kid?
was a common thing. It wasn't just on your records.
No, I
Because
know.
the Christopher Cross on "Ride Like the Wind," he plays a solo at the end. You can't even hear
Yeah,
it.
you can hear it. But
Michael McDonald's
you have to wince to go. It's like.
Michael McDonald's background vocals are louder. Not that that's a bad thing. They're great. Yeah.
Well, Michael Martin, the guy who produced the record, is a great friend. He was one of the only guys, maybe the only guy
that could sight read his piano.
They could sight read Donald Fagen's piano parts, which I'm sure Donald wrote dynamic markings and everything. Detail was their thing, and that's the detail that we all love and
That's right.
respect. Because he was right. I mean, but a lot of cats, man, sit down like Phil and Gaines could do that. Phil and Gaines could read their part, man. The solo on Donald's solo album, which is one of my desert island albums, The Nightfly.
Yeah.
Ruby Baby, that
Yeah,
piano
yeah.
solo is like the perfect piano solo. That was like one take, They don't usually get too many ones.
Okay, if Steely Dan were around with Pro Tools, would they have ever finished a record?
Probably a lot faster. I don't know. I think there was something about when you get hired to play on one of those records, because I didn't. I would have loved to have, but I know all the guys that did and what was like, and I think they dug the process of making people bleed for it because it's different than programming it.
Right.
There's something I can't even articulate verbally that would explain what that must be. It's kind of an X factor. It's like you get 4 or 5 guys in a room with 4 different kinds of time feel, where this thing becomes group time, where everybody's,
time.
one guy might be a little ahead, one guy plays a little back, but somehow it falls into this thing. And you can't write
beat
it
it.
out, and you can't rehearse it.
Right.
Matter of fact, some of the worst things you can do is rehearse a record before you go in the studio and get all your good shit out at rehearsal. They'd hire different rhythm sections and even doing the same song, and they had the money to do this. They spent their money on the records,
Right.
It was their art. This is what they lived. They knew what they wanted, even if other people didn't understand it. I can't speak for Donald Fagen and Walter Becker, but I'm just, from what I've heard and how much of a fan I am and what I listened to, and the way Jeff Beccaro would talk to me about what those sessions were like.
I think that Larry Carlton told me that when they did Asia, that track, because somebody else played drums on it the day before, and he walked in the studio and Steve Gadd was there the next day. He goes, and he saw the charts. I guess we're doing that again.
Yeah.
And
You know the Steve Gadd story?
what? No, let's hear it.
Now, I hope Steve, don't be mad at me, man. Or maybe I'm getting this a little wrong, but the legend has it that Steve showed, and that was a 12-page chart, without doubt. I mean,
Of course.
it's one of the greatest pieces of music ever written for popular music, if you will.
Yeah.
One of the greatest Larry did the chart.
Right.
They went to Larry because Larry's massive ears. He's
Yes.
one of the greats of all time. Larry
Yeah.
Carlton, come on, man.
Yeah. We give it up for Larry,
I call him
yeah.
Sensei.
Yes.
He had those charts, and I remember being up his pad, man. He's like, "Hey, you want to see the chart?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man. Let me see what that looked like." And he would write out the really important stuff, the right voicings and the right
Voicings,
rhythmic
the
notation.
hits that needed to happen.
But you noticed on these charts there was room. He came up with all of his parts. Those great,
Amazing.
Asia.
Oh, my God.
I mean, come on,
So
man.
good.
Only he'd come up with something great.
That's
like
right.
that. You know what I mean? So there was stuff like that. But those he would tell me stories about just what it was like. But Gad came in, and he was a little late. He was always late back then. It was a joke about the New York guys would always come in 4 or 5 hours late. And we're sitting around getting paid for doing nothing. That's how they did things in New York.
Okay.
But anyway, long story short, I wasn't on the date, but this was told to me guys who were on the session. That he came in late and he was, maybe had a little too much fiesta the night before. I mean, this guy's been sober for like 40 years, but this is a long time ago. So, and I wasn't there, but this was told me. He looked a little like, oh God, is this guy, And, Steve just put the chart up, they counted it off, and that was the take.
Oh, my God.
They did came to done maybe 1 or 2 takes, but whatever it is the record. That solo machine. And he's sight reading that.
That's unbelievable.
Man, Steve's one of the great. I spent some time with Steve back in the day. I love, we used to hang a lot. I haven't seen him in a long time. He's out with James Taylor and Clapton and all these guys. One of the greats of all time.
Besides Toto, some of the records, like Thriller, for example, you played.
Yes, that's me going. And all that. Well, I prefer. They used to have just.
And was
the original,
anything written on that?
No. Michael sang me the lick.
Okay.
But they used to have. They had that going for like 45 bars or something like that. I go, I said, that make it more interesting. I had to sell them on it, but they finally went for it. And I played bass on it too.
Okay.
And then Eddie played the solo. But see, the lead vocal and the electric guitar solo were already done. There was another take of Beat It. And when Eddie did the solo, now there's...
Yeah, what's the story on that?
Okay, well,
did you call him?
No, I have nothing to do with it. Eddie had already played on it.
All right. So your part was already done.
No. You don't know what happened.
Okay, let's hear this.
Michael and Quincy, they had done another take of it, apparently.
Okay.
And they had worked on Michael's vocals, and they used to meticulously get, his vocals were quintupled at times.
Okay.
But very slickly done by the genius of Bruce Swedien, the engineer.
Yep.
And Eddie, when they sent the tape up to Ed, it's the ambiguity lies as who cut the tape.
Okay.
It was Simpty Code. Need I say anything? I'll explain what that is.
Explain that.
Now, Don Landy would be too smart for this, and I originally had said, I think Don did it, and Don was like, I didn't do that.
Wait, explain Simpty Code for people
Simpty
that
Code
don't.
was what 2 24-track tape machines back in the day after we were able to discover we could get more than 24 tracks with one machine, they were able to sync up 2 24-track machines, which would give you 48 tracks. Actually, 46, because
you have the
track 24 on both tracks had a Simpty Code, which I believe was some sort of a permutation of a 60-cycle thing that would lock the machines.
Yes.
Now, like any other system like that, if you cut that, it will not lock up.
That's right.
So what happened was, Ed didn't want to play through the section of the song that they wanted him to, so he cut the tape to play the part that's now the record.
Okay.
So what happened was he did that, sent that back to Quincy, and it wouldn't sync up. So he had Eddie's first generation and Michael's first generation vocals and a Simpty Code. With the only thing else was on the track was a Michael hitting a trap case on 2 and 4. Blop, blop, and leakage through 4 or 5 takes of Michael's headphones singing the vocal where you could hear what the old track was.
Oh my God.
So Quincy called me, Jeff Vaccaro, and an engineer named Umberto Gatica to go to Sunset Sound.
Okay.
And fix the track for him. He goes, you gotta make the track backwards to what you can hear on the tape because I don't want to do Michael's vocals again. I don't want to transfer them because I want to keep it first generation. And Eddie's so on this, you got to make it work. So he called me, Jeff. We went down there, and Jeff, the magician that he was, he goes, we're going to go out, we're going to do this. And Jeff goes, I'm going to go out, and I want you to crank Michael's
2 and
vocal.
4. Oh, Michael's vocal.
So I
you
can
can
hear
the bleed.
and the 2 and 4, and let me make a click. And he went out there with 2 drumsticks and a mic, not like this, and went. He made his own classic Jeff click that he would do with the drumsticks.
Right.
And I miss him so fucking much. He was the best. And he got that together. He goes, let me go out and play the drums for this thing and get it done. So of course he goes out. It could have been the first, no more than the second take. He was done. He goes, okay, you're up. So once I knew where the groove was at, my first initial thing, because Eddie was on it, and I heard the shit, I'm going, it's great. And I go like, I got the
So wait, do you play?
I got the Marshalls.
So you had to
out.
redo the rhythm tracks after Eddie put his solo down. Okay.
Now my initial thought to do it, really cranked it. Something like that.
Yeah.
Cranked up quadruple with Marshalls because Eddie's on it. I figured, well, they're going for the rock shit. So I did that, and then I played the bass part to it, which was easy. It's just the guitar part. It's not like I was doing Jaco Pastorius, for God's sake. Bonehead bass, I'm real good at. But anyway, so we sent it back to Q, and they go, we love it, except he goes, Lukey, it's too much. I got to get this on pop and R&B radio, and it's just too metal. You got to come back down. He goes, get that little Fender of yours out. Don't turn it all the way up. Give it gas, And I said, oh, okay, I get what you mean. So I took it, I went back, and I just double-tracked it on 2 with my 59 bursts plugged straight into a modded, Rivera modded me an old Blackface Deluxe that I used for years. Anyway, I did that, and that was fine. Then I went down. They said, perfect. Come down to Westlake, and let's do the rest of the overdubs with Michael and me. And I said, great. So that's when we came up with all that stuff.
So when Michael sang that first part, this dun,
well, he
dun,
heard that was no.
dun.
Well, he had.
Would he sing that to you though?
He used to sing his little demos, but I never heard the demo.
Okay.
But all that was his riff, his vocal riff. He came up with that.
Okay.
And people think if I wrote that, we could have been on my space shuttle talking about this right now.
That's
with
right.
The bread I would have made. But the same thing happened on Human Nature. Like it was another B minor special. You know what I mean? Steve Porcaro wrote the song, great song, and he had it lying around.
Incredible song.
And the story of how that all happened is one thing, but they loved the song. They cut the whole song.
Yep.
They did all the stuff, and then Quincy called me in to do an overdub and said, you got to make this funky for me. I got to get this. It's too pop right now. It needs a little something. I need some glue. And there was nothing written. Quincy never wrote out parts for me, even though he's Quincy Jones.
Yeah.
Unless there was something really specific that everybody had to play. I hired you to be you. And I heard the part. And the first thing that came out was, I used to be really good at these muted notes because the thing you need to know is common tones. That's how you get together muted parts. When you play an R&B, or anything you're trying to find a little cool part that percolates it along, but you're not in anybody's way. I was really good at coming up with that stuff. And my studies helped me not only get the ear for it, but to understand, okay, I'm in the key of B minor. What are my common tones through these changes? Even though they're not exactly bebop changes where you're changing key, you still had to know your basic thing, So I just
that makes a song.
And then
that makes the song.
And all I had was B minor.
That makes the song.
That's when I got hired. It wasn't because I could do all this, because, I still can't do all this.
That is amazing. You're so good at those muted guitar parts,
too. The thing was, I have an arranger's ear. And that's what studio musicians, the guys that were really successful, all have the same arranger's ear.
Yeah.
You have to know, when you sit down and look at a chart and it says B minor, A, G, or E, whatever, it's simple. Like say you're playing behind a songwriter, which most guitarists, when they're trying to make a living, that's the kind of gigs you get. Very few cats can go out and do gigs and shred the way that they really want to. Like, how many Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, Jeff Beck's guys that can go out and play instrumental music in an arena? There's not that many of them.
Right.
Although there's some young kids coming up I got money on. That kid Tim Henson and those guys, Tosin Adasi. Those guys are doing some other stuff, and kids are catching on. When you see millions of followers on these guys, I go,
absolutely.
Anyway, I don't know these guys, but I love them. Anyway,
They're
the
great
point
guys.
being
Yes.
is that what I did, I was able to be, and all the guys in the room with the various instruments, especially when I'm sitting next to two guitar players. Now, how easy is it to get that going on? That was the thing that, the rapport you had with the other guitarists, whether it was, especially when there was no guitar one or two written out, it was just like, well, here's the two of us. What are we gonna? Somebody starts going for a muted part. You go, okay, that's you.
Okay.
And then you come up with an arpeggiated part or something that complements a muted part that works. We used to do that in a lot of Boss Skaggs records. Me and Ray Parker Jr. used to have this great thing where we could both, it sounded like we had rehearsed it. It just happened. Anyway, long story short, you got to be able to listen to somebody's simple music and hear parts around the melody and here's the changes and here's the lead melody with the lyrics or whatever. Now, what goes on around here is usually what makes a song different from being a record.
Okay, the part in Human Nature where you do that descending part, the sustained part.
Well, that was part of the melody.
So good.
That was just luck. I got lucky.
Yeah.
I went with like, okay, I think this is where it's going. And then Quincy's like, I love it. This is great.
Where preparation meets opportunity.
Well, I didn't have any prep. I just said that was the first thing
That's
that
what I'm
barfed
saying.
out
No,
of
you
me.
prepped your whole life for that. To play
That's
these
the
parts.
thing. Yeah, it's a muscle that some people have. Like there were sessions where there were some incredibly famous, incredible musicians. I'm not going to name names. That would end up being stuck in the room with us. They weren't a regular session guy, but they were there to be themselves. It was just like, great, I'm playing with so-and-so, whatever instrument, and it's like, wow, this is going to be great. And then you see the kid, man. We'd be playing, we'd grab the chart, and we didn't rehearse, and then by the first take, we were pretty much honed our part in it, or at least we're talking about before the second take, no, I'm not going to do that, you do that, we have these little chats with ourselves, and then we talk to the artist and the producer, I like that, that's too much, whatever, you edit your material. But there'd be this cat, and they'd just sit there and they wouldn't play. They'd have this look on their face like, they just didn't know the red light fever. That's another, the pressure's deep, man.
Yeah.
You can't fold up, man. I mean, because things are tough, man. You gotta double down or you're out.
But after a while, though, after you've done hundreds of these sessions, though, then you pretty much know what to do, right? Or is
it's more like what's expected of you.
Okay, but
If you don't deliver, I mean, sometimes, listen, man, I don't care if you're, the greatest Super Bowl player in the world, you'll drop a fucking catch every once in a while.
Yeah.
It happened to me the other night, man. My gear freaks out. Well, what can I tell you? It's live, you know what I mean? It's not one of my greatest nights, but hey, it's not my fault there's a 50-cycle hum blazing through everything. But anyway, and that'll throw you off your game, when something goes squirrely on stage, I remember moving, just like one night we were playing live, and I just happened to move out of the way in a place where I normally wouldn't move, and a par can fell and would have crushed me.
Oh, my
where I was
God.
standing. And when you're on stage and there's glass shards in your arm, you're still playing the song, you're going, I was almost a dead man. When you come off the stage, it's very weird, because there's a lot of accidents that can happen.
Right.
Anyway, I got off topic here. Where were we? We were about parts on songs.
Let's talk about parts on Toto's songs, or let's talk about some solos, for example.
I got to be honest with you. I don't remember all of them.
You don't have to.
There's a
remember all
couple
of
that
them.
I like. Rosanna, I pretty much play the same, but not.
Okay, let's
always.
talk about Rosanna. Let's talk about that.
Pretty
So when that
okay.
when that solo did you improvise that solo?
Yeah.
Okay, so
But then I double tracked it right afterwards. So that's what I used to do a lot, and I used to be really good at it. I could play an improvised solo and then double track it right away because I remember I had that frosty memory before I lit it on fire during the 80s.
Okay, so that solo.
Joking.
Well, there's the two solos in it. The second solo.
Well, the one at the end, that whole
That's
part of the
insane.
song was never supposed to be there.
Right.
We learned, we don't rehearse. We never rehearse.
Right.
Who we show up and go, who's got two? Paige always had songs. But by the fourth album, we were all encouraged to write, because I would start writing stuff on the third album. And Dave was really, come on, man, you got stuff in you, let's get it out. But he sat down day one at Sunset Sound. He brings in Rosanna.
Yeah.
He sits down at the piano and starts playing it.
Okay.
And we're going, this is great, man. Because the record company said, you don't have a hit record next time, you're toast. There's motivation. There's motivation for that. So we were like, okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna give them what they want. Dave's always been one of my very favorite songwriters because he just brings it. And he sat down with this thing, and we said, we love this. It's gonna be great. And it was a Bo Diddley groove originally.
Okay.
Dun, 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 dun,
Yep.
dun. And then you sing the song to that. And Jeff had been listening to nothing but Bernard Purdie, Babylon Sisters, and "Fool in the Rain" by Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
And that's all he was. Bonham, Purdie, and he was. So Dave starts singing. And Jeff goes, no, that ain't the groove, man. He sat down behind the drums and started playing what is now the legendary groove that he came up with. And Dave started playing that. He goes, that's good. We're all going. Hungate started playing. Hungate started writing down a quick little chart for us just to get what's going on. We sat around the piano. He goes, I'm not sure who should sing this yet. Because he had me and Bobby Kibble. And that's sometimes how we'd figure it out.
How did you decide to divide the vocal in the middle
David,
of the verse?
whoever wrote the songs, a lot of times, if I wrote my song myself, I would sing.
Yeah.
But when it was one of Dave's songs,
Yeah.
it would either be relegated to Bobby, who was our original singer with a high tenor.
Yep.
And all of us sang. I sang probably more. Dave and I also sang. So he goes, let me hear you on this.
Yeah.
And I sounded okay in G.
Yeah.
And he goes, but I want to hear Kimball. And Kimball it was too low
Too low for him, right?
So he says, let me find that key. And he goes, I got an idea. Why don't you sing this part and we'll modulate into this? And that wasn't the way it was written when he brought it in. And this is all happening on
the
10
spot.
minutes before we're going to cut the track.
Okay.
We'll play it for the first time.
All right.
We hadn't played it yet.
Right.
So Jeff's got the groove. Hungate and him were like this. And so that was, and then Dave had his thing. And then, I can't. Right? And that was on the tracking date. And we started playing that. And I didn't play anything in the middle solo because I figured I was going to overdub that. So I kept the rhythm going in that.
Yeah.
But it was supposed to end like, and right?
Yeah.
At the end of it, and this used to happen a lot when we were young. We were just young and hard want to play and jam, so we figured, we got the take. We're looking and everybody's going like this. It was take two. And the first time we scuffled through it, made a few mistakes. Okay, let me do this, a few changes. Okay, this is it, take two. And at the end, Jeff just went, and he started playing that second line shit, and Paige went right into his Professor Longhair impression.
Wait a minute. So
and I started just playing, and that was like that.
Okay, so he starts out with the piano fills there, and then you come in with your solo.
Right.
And that was on the spot.
Yeah.
When did you decide that you're going to leave that whole ending on there? Right then, you're like, this
Well,
is
we
great.
said we were playing it. It was thought that it was pretty good. And
Yeah.
Al Schmidt, legendary engineer, Al Schmidt, God bless his soul.
Yep.
He was so cool. I learned so much from him about engineering. But anyway, I remember we all leaned over when it finally ended. I said, "Did you get all that?" And Al goes, "Absolutely." And we all went in. Then I double tracked my the power parts and stuff,
Yep.
and then I did the middle solo right there. Yeah. Right. People play it differently.
Okay,
I don't
licks
know.
like that.
That was just like a thing. Then I had to double it. What was that lick again?
Okay, so
But that was 1981. So come on.
Okay, so licks like that.
I ain't that smart.
What would you even call that style?
It had notes outside of a rock pentatonic thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? I would
Yes.
never call myself a jazz musician. I'm calling myself a rock musician that studied music, loves jazz, loves R&B, loves all the fusion, loves all of it. But I never transcribed the Coltrane solo in my life, and I didn't sit with the fake book, and I don't know every 2-5-1 turnaround that every
But you
bebopper
did.
knows.
You listen to players like Joe Pass,
Oh
for
yeah,
example?
listen, man. I studied all this stuff. I love jazz. But if you really want to be a jazz player, your buddy Pat Metheny would tell you this, because I read a great thing. Somebody told me, Mike Thompson told me that he studied with Pat in Berkeley back in the day. And so Pat said, "Look, you want to play jazz? You got to. That's a 24-hour gig, man." He goes, "You're a great player at what you do. Be you."
Right.
And there's something to be said for that. So, I mean, we all steal from who we steal from and get inspired from what we get inspired from. But at the end of the day, when you put it in the milkshake blender, it comes out as you.
But those notes, that's the stuff that hit me when I was
Well, it wasn't.
when I was a
it wasn't
kid.
typic pentatonic.
No, I
I
thought,
using
wow.
chromatics while defining the actual shape of the chord without being an obvious arpeggio.
And that is your style there.
I don't know what my style is like.
Your
Hanging on for dear life is my style.
This is the thing. It's like it's interesting. Your improvisations sound like you're hanging out for dear life, and yet you don't make mistakes.
Sure I do. You just don't hear them. I can
No.
punch it in on a record, and you live, I make mistakes all the time, man. And you know what's really pisses me off, man? I make mistakes on dumb shit. Oh, the worst. It's the worst when it's one thing if you're going for something really difficult and you kind of flubbing up. People go, "Ah, man, okay, listen, I know how you feel." But when you're playing something really stupid and it's wrong and it's really loud, I was out with Ringo, man. We were doing right?
Yeah.
First time we ever played it.
Oh no!
I was like,
Don't tell me.
I mean, I just fucking had a stroke or something like that in the middle. It wasn't that bad, but it was bad enough. You know, one of the songs, dodgy note. And, you know, I was afraid to look. Look at the comments like, you know, yeah, fucking rookie mistake. Well, you suck, you old man. But you dementia set in. You know, it's like, I don't want to read this shit. Like, everybody makes mistakes. I remember seeing Larry Carlton at Dante's once. He broke a string. And you go, oh, fuck, man, broke a string. He smiled. He turned around and got the clippers on. Cut off the B string. So now he only have 4 strings. Cut the third string off. It's just the low 3 strings, and he played the most brilliant solo you've ever heard in your life on 3 fucking strings. I said, well, there you go.
When I saw Larry play at Baked Potato, and it wasn't Larry's gig, it was Greg Matheson's
Yeah, I remember
gig.
that. I remember that.
I'm sitting there at the front table. I was there with Tim Pierce, and Larry played Happy Birthday. He played the most amazing harmonization of Happy Birthday
Every night
just
you can do that.
on the spot. And
When
it was,
there was a song called
it was
Only
unbelievable.
Yesterday that we used to. But before he would do that, every night, he would play a chord melody.
He's an amazing chord
Never
melody player.
in 40
Never played the
shows
same
we
thing.
did
Right.
was ever remotely close.
Right.
He would find, and even if he was going for something, he kind of like went off, he'd find a way to make that work.
I asked him on
It's
break.
like he dug that
I
more
said-
than anything, you know?
I said, Larry, you improvised that, right? He said, oh yeah, that was unbelievable. Let's go back to Rosanna. I want to talk about the verse muted guitar part, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that stuff you can play all day so accurately.
Here's the thing, I've been paid to play rhythm guitar 90% of the time. So it's one of those kind of things that'll, some people starting out now that I've seen, dazzle you online. But they've spent time to, get the take, and there's nothing wrong with that. We spend time in the studio getting a great take.
Right.
I'm not talking about that. But a lot of these guys, they didn't spend a lot of time doing the dumb shit, which is learning how to just play simple with a drummer and groove. It's harder than it looks.
Yeah.
The click track.
Yeah.
It's a click tracks
Make it
are
have
very
feel.
intimidating to
That's
people.
right.
Because it keeps. I saw some of these Wonder Kids, years ago. Not the ones we got today, but years ago on the internet or when that was first starting out, and these cats could play brilliant. And then you see them at the NAMM show, and they're 3 bars ahead of their backing track because they're nervous as fuck, and their whole mystique has been blown. Because I'm not saying you need to sit in front of a click track all day long. I mean, if you're a natural musician, time is something that should feel pretty normal to you. But playing along to records and figuring out why that feels good. A lot of records didn't have clicks. That's why, people that give...
Did the Beatles use clicks ever?
If anybody gives... Ringo, it was the click. He goes, I
was
am
the click.
I am the click. And he is.
He is.
Man, let me tell you, and all the creative drum parts, instead of going boom, smack, which would have fit all those, but blah, 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 and come to all those creative drum parts, those were his parts.
Yeah.
And without those,
That's right. The songs
the
would
Beatles
not be
would have
even...
sounded completely different.
That's right.
All 4 of those guys created the genius.
That's right.
And they're all geniuses on their own.
Right.
But collectively, there was magic there that you can't rehearse, learn, find. it's magic from God, from heaven, whatever you want to believe in. I mean, I believe it's somewhat heaven sent, you know. I mean, I don't think that fast. Why did this part come into my head when I heard these chord changes? I really wish I could tell you I was that brilliant, but I mean, something inspires me. And it's like one day I could play the guitar, couldn't play, and one day I could. It was very weird. I was sitting on my front, struggling through it, and nobody's ever going to believe this. I told this story before, but, you know, all of a sudden I went like, and when my mother was pregnant, a psychic told her that I was probably going to be a musician. When I was 8 years old, all of a sudden it would make sense to me. I saw the Beatles when I started playing when I was around 8. It was very strange.
Okay, I want to ask you about this, about your right hand, okay? So I'm seeing you play up right here, and your right hand is so relaxed. Now,
My teacher, it's all about, first off, relaxing the wrist.
Right.
If you're stiff like this, not only is it harder to execute, but it's also going to give you tendonitis one of these days.
Right.
Advice number 2, when it starts to hurt from practicing, please stop. Please stop. Get up, stretch it out, walk around. Otherwise, you're going to practice yourself into hell. Then you won't be able to play at all. I got a couple of friends of mine that have done that.
Oh, yeah.
They would never put it down. They were, I'm going to stay in my house all day long, practice 16 hours a day. Now they can't play at all. So what was the point of that exercise? If you're a weightlifter, you don't just sit there and lift up 300 pounds all day long. Your muscles are going to go like this, you know. But it's the same thing with any musical instrument. When it hurts, there's a reason why it hurts. Now, if you're playing live and it's like, you know, then you're going to give up the blood, but you got to let it rest for a while. You can't just keep at it. Otherwise, it's like my knee. I just had my knee replaced, you know. It's not my fault. I just got old and wore it down to bone, and you got to get replacement parts. I'm 65, the decade of replacement parts.
Are there things that you wanted to have practiced or think about practicing? Any new ideas that you work on?
You know, when I see, you know, I remember when I first heard Alan Holdsworth.
Yeah.
You know, and he, God bless his soul, he was a good friend, man. I'm not good enough to curl up his cables, but, you know, we were buddies, you know, and you know, outside off the gig, but I used to go see him play. And before, I mean, when I heard "Believe It," the Tony Williams album in 1975, before Eddie was even thought of, I mean, in terms of fame, we didn't understand what that was and how it was happening, but we listened to it over and over.
Did you go see him play live back then?
No, he wasn't playing around at that time. But we did get to know each other a little bit. I used to go see, when he started playing around town, I went to see him.
Talk about how great of a guitar player Alan was.
And the worst part about it, he'd play the most astounding shit, and then he'd come off the gig going, "That's the worst I've ever played." And I said, "Well, then I guess we should all go home and kill ourselves then, Alan, because, you know, there's no point in it anymore." But he was so humble, to a fault, I think. He was like, "Come on, man, what are you giving yourself? You got to know that that's pretty good."
Right.
That nobody else on planet Earth can play chords unless they have 8 fingers down here. You know, he's just, and it was so, that legato thing.
Yeah,
I
so
never
beautiful.
really, you know, I can do a little bit of it, but I mean, that's something that I really wish I could. I just think, you know, I got what I got. I got to be happy. I got more than I deserve. It's another time. And I think people having these styles, if everybody does it,
That's right. Nobody's an individual.
you know, it's like I remember talking to Ed about the whole, everybody does it.
What did he think of that?
He goes,
Did it bother him, or did not care?
It depends on what mood he was in. We talked about him. He says it's become a parlor trick. I was just trying to make music and fill out the sound of a 3-piece band, and it all came off of Heartbreaker by Jimmy Page. He just said, "Oh, look what I found," you know.
Right.
And then he went crazy discovering all that. I'm sorry, I'm playing all this shit real sloppy. I'm just making bad examples. But, you know, and then he said it became a thing, you know. And then when everybody did it and turned it into this thing, he felt weird about it. But then again, you know, that's why, I mean, everybody started doing it for a while, and, you know, myself included, and I never did it very well, by the way, but I won't do that anymore. I won't get that. I won't do anything that remotely, because Ed was too important to me.
I know you and Ed were really, really close friends.
He was a very, 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 very close friend. I mean, we saw each other a lot off the gig, you know. And when we hung out, we didn't sit around and talk about guitar shit. You know, we were just being two idiots that kind of know what the life is. And we had a lot of fun, did some crazy shit together, but he was a sweet man. All he cared about was playing and his family. That's all he cared about.
Talk about what was great, from your perspective, about Ed's playing. What did you love about his playing?
Everything. Trailblazer. I mean, we were doing our very first album, and you know, I'm thinking I'm 19 years old. Everybody's giving me all this love and shit like that, you know. And Paige, he goes, I got something for you. I was just about to do the solo in the song called "Girl Goodbye." He goes, yeah, before you start, I want to play you something. I just got this new record. I go, yeah, what is it? And they had a turntable in the studio, and he lifts down the needle on Eruption and plays it for me, man. And, you know, it was the most mind-fucking thing I've ever. I go, how and what, who, how? I went, fuck. And then I'd heard of this guy. Me and Landau thought, oh, really, I can speak for myself. Gazzari's down here in Hollywood.
Okay.
Right? Van Halen was the headline act. Now, we had heard about a guy named Van Halen, because Landau and I used to go down to Guitar Center and play guitars we couldn't afford. And we were good, and the guys would come up and say, you know, there's another guy that comes in here from Pasadena. You guys should meet him. Van Halen. I thought a guy was named Van Halen, like a dude. I didn't know it was a family.
Right.
And we auditioned for Gazzari's when we were 16 years old, but we didn't tell them. Me and Landau and John Pierce, we had a band. And we got the gig until they found out we were 16. And then Van Halen was the headline act, and they had been for a while. And when the first Van Halen came out, Eddie lied about his age. And the first time we ever really hung out and had an all-nighter together, she's like, how the fuck old are you? He goes, he was 2 years older than me. I go, they said you were this old. He goes, that wasn't me. They lowered my age because they somehow thought it would make me cool. At the end, everybody found out. I'm not telling any secrets.
Right.
He was 2 years older. I mean, he would have been 67.
Yeah.
But, you know, it blew my mind. It blew the socks off of the guitar. It was like Hendrix when he came in. Nobody knew what he was doing and how the sounds were made. But Eddie was just on fire.
Yeah.
And didn't play like anybody else. And we need a cat. We need another. There's a couple cats I've heard lately that I may have mentioned that are turning it around, taking the instrument in a different direction. There's the purists. There's always going to be the purists, the great blues players, the great metal players. That's good for great country players. But, you know, the guys that fall in the cracks and take the rock thing into another level, maybe not in a commercial level. If I could have one honest critique of modern rock music or modern pop music in general, is that there's some phenomenal players that you go, wow. What there's not is a lot of phenomenal songs.
Right.
You know, put Stevie Wonder's Send One Your Love or anything off of the Stevie Wonder, first 5 Stevie Wonder albums, against what the harmonic content of a #1 record is today.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I'm an old bastard, the old guy, doesn't get the... Just speaking from a harmonic standpoint of what a pop record could get away with.
When you're saying harmonic, just for people, that you mean the harmony.
I mean the chords not being stupid 1, 3, 5, simple. There was altered chords. There were sevenths, ninths.
That's right.
Even on pop,
so much color.
Somebody throw in something. You know what I mean?
Right.
And the assumption that the people in the audience are going to go, "Oh, that's that jazz music. I'm going to turn it off." Never entered anybody's mind.
No.
It was just the beautiful Al Jarreau records that Graydon produced, man. All those great Earth, Wind, and Fire records.
Oh, yeah.
I Am that Foster co-wrote and produced, and I got to play a little bit on. All those great songs, In the Stone, After the Love Is Gone, a ballad with those corners. I remember hearing those guys writing that song. We'd be on a Barbra Streisand session, and Foster and Graydon go, "Hey, we got this new song. It's called After the Love Is Gone." And it had the great whole tone minor modulation. Nobody ever heard that before. I was like, whoa! When was the last time you listened to a pop radio and went, whoa, what the heck, what was that? I'm not trying to put down modern music. It's a different thing altogether.
Yeah.
Because for music, for us, that was it. There was no cell phone. There was no distractions. Somebody got a new album. We went to the guy's house. We had the best stereo. We all sat in a line so we could all get an equal fucking distance between the left and right speakers. Side one would go on and nobody would really talk except if something was great. You punch the guy behind you. And then at the end of side one, you go, fuck, and then you discuss a little bit and you play side two, same thing would happen. You go, play side one again. And we take these records in. We take the artist's effort, and it meant something. And we studied, we learned. Then we get out some guitars or something and go like, what was that?
Yeah.
Me and Mike would sit around and hang out, or one of us would learn something and go like, oh yeah, that's what it is. You know, and that was how you grew. And then we had places, we had gigs we could do. There's no gigs anymore.
Which is really important.
There's no gigs. There's no high school dances. There's no teenage fair where you go play and people come see you. Even backyard parties on a Friday night, they'd hire a band, even if it's all the beer you could drink in high school. Yeah, great, we're in. But, now it's all DJs.
That's right.
Okay, cost effective. You could turn it down. Nobody gets bummed out. Okay, I get it. Play every song you want to hear. Great, perfectly. But where's the place for the young people to learn? And, man, I didn't get into recording studios. They've been playing for 14 years.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
I didn't walk into this and go, I've been playing for 2 months and I wrote a song and my parents told me I'm great, so they made me a perfect CD that looks like I'm a pro, but you put it on and you're not ready yet.
Right.
I'm not saying you're never going to be ready, but you're not ready now. I wasn't ready when I was 15.
Do you think, Luke, that recording on tape, I've asked a lot of people this, that because of that, because people you just couldn't go into a studio. You didn't have a Pro Tools at your house that anybody could make anything.
I didn't have anything at my house.
Right. So you still don't, right?
Well, no, I'm not.
I asked him, I said, hey, do you have a thing? He goes,
don't.
yeah, I have my studio here, and he has his phone, and that's it.
Well, look, I in my particular life, I have 4 kids, and I have 2 younger ones,
Yeah.
I'm on the road, what was it, 220 days last year?
Yeah.
When I'm home, I'm home. I tried to have a room in my house once, but then everything broke every day and I had people there. Right. All of a sudden it wasn't my house anymore.
Right.
And I understand, I can speak engineer, I can talk, I know frequencies, I know limiters, I know what to ask for. In the analog days, I would be one of the pair of hands on there before there was, what do you call it?
Flying faders.
Yeah. All that stuff.
Guitar solo. It's actually a dual solo, 2 different guitar players, and it's from a band that are Notorious Blockers, so I can only play a small bit of it. Here it is. Solo number 11 is by a guitarist that's not playing in one of his actual groups. He's actually sitting in with this band, who happen to be the biggest band of all time. Coming in at number 10 is a guitar solo that's also from a What Makes This Song Great video that I did on this particular band. This is one of my favorite solos by this guitarist, and I like it because it plays over the changes perfectly, and it's really unlike anything he ever played. It's an incredibly melodic solo. Check it out. Solo number 9 is by a band that I've never featured on my channel, and everyone asks me why I don't, because they're also Notorious Blockers, so I had to recreate a track and hope that it actually doesn't get taken down. But this is a phenomenal First songs I ever learned on the guitar, and it's actually the first guitar solo I ever learned. As a matter of fact, my mom used to play rhythm guitar while I practiced this solo. That's actually true. Solo number 7, I was going to play, but I actually can't stretch to reach the first lick. I used to be able to years ago, but it goes from 12 to 16 and 19. But the greatest part of this lick, the opening lick, is that it goes through these 4-1 plagal cadences from E to B to G to D. And the rest of the solo is killer too. Check it out. Solo number 6 is from a record that came out in 1982. In fact, the guitarist who's playing the solo actually sings the verse part in this, and he was one of the biggest session guitar players ever. Now, once we get into the top 5, really any of these solos could have been number 1. All of the guitar players in the top 5 are probably my biggest influences. I really was into all their playing, studied it a lot, and I just really think that they're all amazing, amazing solos. Coming in at number 5.